Day 2 here in New London, Pennsylvania. It's chilly this morning. We'll show you what's going on. Here we go. So we've got the door removed again. We've cut some holes into the subfloor here in front of where the tile is at to allow us to get our jacks in and directly underneath the header of the door. We've used those jacks to take some weight of the rest of the house, the second floor, up off of this area, and that has created a nice gap here between the subfloor and the bottom of this wall. It's going to allow us to get in and cut these different pieces out. We got to remove this piece of damaged wood. We got to remove a little bit of a subfloor here that's been damaged, and then we have to get our squash blocks back in. And so the jacks taking the pressure off the house allow us to do that safely, and that's the next step. Now, of course, whenever we have to take some weight off the house in order to do some things, lift some things up, jack some things, every time things move, you have a chance of cracking drywall. That's in the agreement, it's in the contract. We let you know from the front side. Due to the occasional violent nature of construction, occasionally drywall cracks, nail pops, things can occur, and that's something that could potentially be fixed afterwards. So you can see right here, you know, that's starting to open just a little bit. It may close very nicely when the weight comes back down on that side. There's a little bit of a buckle going on right here, and again, that may flatten out once this comes back down. Kind of surprising, I guess this whole side moved together and there's nothing over here at all. But it's just kind of part and parcel to when you go to make these kind of repairs. Sometimes you have to break a couple things in order to fix it correctly, and in this case we have to get some weight off the house so that we can get to those framing pieces and to get that subfloor replaced, so that when the house is sitting, because what's going to happen is the opposite. If we don't fix it and it continues to sag, it continues to settle, you're going to wind up with drywall cracks eventually anyways, because that side of the house is going to wind up actually being too low. So we're going to get that back up where it's supposed to be at the proper height, get new wood in there to hold it at that height, and then if there's any residual drywall ugliness that, you know, can't just be fixed with a coat of paint, then we can talk to the customer about getting some spackle in here and doing the drywall work necessary to clean that up and fix that. But because we can't anticipate exactly what that's going to be, we usually don't put that in the contract. We just say if something happens, if cracking occurs, then we'll do a change order and we'll add that to the end of the agreement. But we do let people know on the front end, hey, by the way, there's a possibility while we're doing this work, because we're going to jack the house, we may wind up with some cracks, with some drywall damage. Minor, something easy can be fixed, but in order to make the repair properly, that's just something that has to take place. So I made some repairs. We took out our jack post, and I'll take you up and show you what's going on. So Norm did a nice job of getting 2x4 out of here and a new piece back in, the bottom wall plate 2x6, and then we just patched in that OSB there, and then we've got some squash blocks down here, and we ran the doorbell wire up through the door jamb because I wanted it up. I don't want it down here in the corner because that makes it very difficult to waterproof. So I want this up a little bit higher so that it's not going to get in the way of our fan flashing and everything we're doing here to waterproof this when it's back together. So part of the way we had to do this in order to get the jacks, we had them kind of cantilevered out here, and when we jacked up, they were so far out the bottom was trying to kick. So we cut 2 U-shapes here into the subfloor to allow us to get them recessed directly underneath that header beam up top. So we were lifting directly underneath of it, and that little trick allowed us to get the weight off of this so that we could make these repairs, get this new piece sandwiched in, and then we have a second piece of plywood underneath here to spread the load across the new piece and the old piece, and some squash blocks in there directly supporting the load from the jack stud and the king stud there. So now that piece is done, we can get our ribbon board put on. Once our ribbon board is reinstalled, flash the opening, do the pan, get the door in. That's coming up next. Well, Mother Nature's not cooperating today. It's starting to spit on us just a little bit. We've got the door flipped upside down because we got to clean the old glue off the bottom of it so we can get that nice and level. We're going to edit in a couple of photos here, and you can see that we got the new ribbon board put in, and then in front of that we placed some OSB plywood to pack this out to the proper thickness, and then we installed the ice and water shield. And then you'll see in these 2 photos where we added the fluid applied membrane here into the corners. And now you can come back here and I'll show you live what we got is once that was in there, now we layered in the house strap and all the proper sequencing so that any water that comes down the face of this, any water that comes down the J channel on the side of the door is out in front of all the goo and all of everything else. And the goo is sealing the ice and water shield into this corner. It's also sealing this edge, but again, the water should be mechanically layered out in front. It would take a whole lot of doing for water to get behind this now. We did the same thing over on this side where we had the fluid applied membrane making that corner seal for us, and then we've of course fixed the house wrap so that all flows down nicely over the outside. So the most part, the water should be out here. If it somehow got into a jam, it's going to into the jam, it's going to have a path to daylight. It's not going to have a way to get to the wood. We'll of course back dam and air seal this once we get it installed, and then we wrap the old house wrap back in front because this has all of our storyboard lines on it for where the siding goes when it goes back. We've got to put the new GFI outlet in here and our service boxes up top, but now we're ready to put adhesive goo on either side of this, set the door into that, and we'll lap it the siding on top, the house wrap on top, over the new drip cap. So in the rush to try to beat the rain, we got the door back in, but I didn't get to take a lot of pictures of different things, but we'll talk you through some of what else happened. Once we left that last piece of footage, we added some quad sealant up this side, across the top of the header, and down the other side, just behind where that brick mold was going to layer in, so that this is pressed into adhesive. And that helps primarily with air sealing, but it's also to keep the water out as well. The J channel is going to butt up against this, and in theory, gravity likes to run downhill. So any water that gets in there should just flow down. It's not going to want a capillary action behind this and suck in. And then up at the top, we put a drip cap on, and we're going to cut this new piece of house wrap tight to that piece of flashing tomorrow after the rain's done. And the next step that we did is we took a look at the bottom of the door, and we realized that 1 3/4 inches off the inside edge is where one of the flat parts was. There's a bunch of hollow voids in there, but one of the flat parts is in there about 1 3/4 inches. So we ran a bead of that same quad adhesive down across here under the threshold, so that when the door sat down in it, we created a back dam with that, flooded that into the back edge of the corner here. So again, any water that gets down these side jams, if ever got in there, can't get into the house. It has to come out and forward and out and underneath the door. And so we're gonna have that option for that water to flow out this direction if need be. Next step is we're gonna get some AZAC on here, 1x16 across the front to each edge. We'll bring the J channels down, straight past that, and we'll have siding from the bottom up on each side. We're working on getting our GFI back on now, and of course figuring out what the dorky things the last electrician did who worked on it, because it's obviously not playing nice right now, and the old one wasn't working, and now we're starting to figure out why. And then what we're actually going to do is we're going to remove the siding from here up to the bottom of that window and make sure that we found some problems with the house wrap, the old house wrap. It's torn, it's tattered, it's not watertight anymore. So what we want to do is we're going to take this up to at least the bottom of the windows, because a high percentage of leaks happen at the J channels at the corners of windows. So let's go up at least that high. Let's repair, put new house wrap from there down, get our metal trim pieces up underneath the nailing fin of the bottom of this window, so that we know that any water that comes down those J channels on our side is able to get pumped out into the drain cavities of the siding itself, and that we've got good, clean, brand new house wrap all the way down to this door, that we're not going to get, if copious amounts of water get back there because of the window, that again, we've given it mechanical flashing layers to move it to the outside, that it can't get behind this door and cause problems again. And if you're a contractor, it's something you want to think about, is your future liability. If you worked on this door and you took it out and you put it back in, and then you didn't address what was above here, and they later had a leak, whose responsibility is it? Well, technically it's that old tarred and tattered house wrap, but nobody's going to see it that way. You're going to get blamed because you put the door in. So make sure you cover yourself and go the extra measure when necessary to make sure that, everything that, potentially could go wrong, that you've taken advantage of making sure that you've addressed those things so that it doesn't come back on you in a year or two from now. The other piece that we changed when we were putting this door back together, Norm had noticed that when we swung the door in, there's really not room for you to put a rug in there or anything to step on to wipe your feet on, because of the increased height of the tile that was put in. So we had some room at the top. We took some measurements, and we determined that yes, we could succeed in raising this door, but you got to think about future proofing. If she wants to replace this door here in a couple of years, the new doors measure like 81.5 unit dimension high, and right now we've only got, the door itself is 80 inches. I think we've got 80.5 up there. So we raised that. When we raised that up, we tightened that up to that 80.5 mark, and basically we took out the board that they had up top and we kind of moved it to the bottom essentially to lift that. But if they ever put a new door in here and they couldn't get it to the height, there is an extra 2x6 up in that cavity that's not sitting on jack studs. The beam should run long and go beyond that, and that board is just there to pack down the header. So in theory, we should be able to pull out that 2x6, allow us to put a taller door in here in the future, if that's something they decide they want to do. Before you go changing the floor height and moving things up, make sure you've investigated, because you don't want to make the next guy really upset, especially if it's possible that you might be the next guy who's working on this. So Norm's checked the door for operation. We made sure we were plumbed true, all those different directions, making sure everything's plumbed and leveled square and all the things that needs to be done so that the door operates properly. We're good on that. So the next piece is we have to back dam and air seal this. So you'll notice that I left my Tyvek long into the house to give me something to hold on to, that when I take my foam backer rod and I start shoving this into the door, that I've got something, I got a way to hold on to that Tyvek to keep it out. And the last thing I'm going to do when we're all done is we'll cut that off. But we're going to shove this backer rod in here to give us something to caulk to, and then we're going to fill that with either the air dam product or even just regular caulk is fine, but I like using the air dam product. It's got the elasticity, it really holds up. I'm sure you could use quad or something else, but I'm going to stick with what we know, and we're going to run that up in that same foam backer rod all the way across the top. And what that's going to do is that's going to create an air cavity that when the wind blows, it can pressurize that cavity, but it can't ever blow through that cavity. So that's going to help slow down any kind of drafts coming through the door. It's also going to help make sure that rain can't get blown into the cavity, because once that cavity is pressurized, there's nowhere for the rain to go. It can't blow that wind. The wind can't blow that rain into into that space because you've created that pressurized cavity. So we want to air seal back here, and we want to do the water sealing out at the front. But if the water sealing, the water barrier ever fails at the front and it gets into this door jamb cavity, then we've created a seal here at the back, and that's our backup seal, and the water can flow down through this chase all the way down to the bottom, and it can get out the bottom in the front. So that's one of the principles behind the air dam in the back ceiling, and I highly recommend if you're installing doors and windows that you stop shoving pink fluffy stuff into these cavities and you go with the air dam method, because it's a lot better from an energy efficiency standpoint. What you're losing in thermal value of not having insulation and creating all those little tiny air pockets, you're gaining by controlling air and preventing air flow through that space. So I don't like spray foam because over time, as this shifts and that dries out, it does not flex. It's not going to flex with this, and it's going to delaminate and come unglued from the wood over time, and then you're going to have that air penetration coming through there again, which is why I like the flexible products, especially the air dam from 𝗂𝘁'𝘀. And we've got other videos on our window and door playlist and in our exterior siding renovation playlist that'll show you some of those different pieces, and maybe we can link to those down below. So make sure when you put your shims in that you want them tipped, if anything, to the outside. So any water that's coming down in that cavity, it's moving out. You don't want to tip them in where it's going to flow in towards the house. But again, we're going to back dam, air seal this. We'll show you that in the next video. So we've got our backer rod, and we're using different thicknesses as we get around the door, and they're in different requirements based on how wide the gap is. I'm just taking a wooden shim here, kind of working this back in with the butt end on the wider parts, and then using the skinny end. And I don't want to bury it too deep. I just need to get something in there so that when we go to run the sausage gun against there, that the adhesive goo, the air dam doesn't just disappear into the wall cavity. We want to give it some place to stop at. And so by adding this rear seal, that's helping to do this. And then one of the places you really want to pay attention to the details on is down here at this bottom. And you want to make sure that even though the air dam is back here, that we've sealed in to the front, that any water that gets in here, it has to come out. I don't want to leave a gap here at the bottom, or otherwise you'll have the wind whistling through there. So we got to make sure we get that whole thing sealed up tight. Cope Construction and Renovation, proudly serving southern Chester County from Nottingham to Chadds Ford and the surrounding areas. Remember, we're finished with it. You're proud to say it's not just done, it was Cope built. We'll catch you on the next edition of Forever Home. Bye for now.